The phone lit up and the world tipped. Riley Carter stared as the message erased a future. Breath stung. The room hummed like a slow siren. He thought, not like this. He wanted to run, but his legs held him like anchors. Riley said, "Stay steady." The light from the screen burned his eyes. The air tasted like old metal. He heard the fridge buzz and his heart drum. He feared the end of his dream. He reached for courage and found only noise. Riley said, "I can survive this." Wind pressed the window and the blinds shivered. Streetlights smeared the wall. The floor swayed under his socks. He saw the door and felt a tug to move. The phone buzzed again. A final blow. Riley said, "Tell me it is not over." Silence answered. Then a car horn snapped the stillness. He stepped toward the door, and something shifted behind it. Riley stood in the hush and listened to the rain count seconds. He needed a plan. He feared freezing. He feared choosing wrong. The room held the scent of cold coffee and damp dust. Riley said, "One thing at a time." He checked the locks. He grabbed the duffel. He remembered the promise he made to himself on a lonely night. The promise to keep moving when fear shouted stop. A car passed and washed light across the wall. He pictured the path to the stairwell and the alley. He heard a soft thump beyond the door and felt heat rise in his neck. Riley said, "If it is danger, meet it awake." He stood taller. He breathed slow. He reached for the knob again, and the thump came twice. The chain clicked back and the door opened 2 inches. Cold air slid in and raised bumps along his arms. Riley said, "Who is there?" The hallway was a tunnel of shadow and gloss. He heard only rain and the breath in his own chest. He thought of Eva Brooks, who once said, "Keep your head up when the floor shakes." He checked the peephole. Nothing but blur and light smear. Riley said, "Step forward if you need help." The elevator groaned down the hall. The cable sang. A memory of another loss pulsed and then faded. He widened the door, ready to shut it fast. The hinge sighed. Something skittered near the mat, and he stilled. A flyer had slipped under the door and soaked at the edges. It clung to his shoe. He laughed once, short and raw. Relief cut through him and left a hollow echo. Riley said, "Get a grip." He bent, peeled the paper free, and felt the floor steady. Then the phone buzzed again with a new message. The words hit like cold glass. The deal was dead. No appeal. No second try. Riley said, "I can still fight." The rain grew louder, and the wind shoved at the window. He folded the flyer and tucked it into the duffel. He stood in the doorway, half in and half out, and the hall lights flickered twice as if warning him. He locked the door and turned for the stairs. Each step gave him a counted beat. He needed air. He needed space to think. Riley said, "Move now, think after." The stairwell smelled of wet concrete. Lights buzzed in a tired line. He heard a neighbor laugh 2 floors up and then hush. He felt the old fear try to climb his back. He refused it. At the ground floor, the exit bar waited like a test. Riley said, "Open it." He pushed, and rain rushed his face. The city breathed cold on his skin. Thunder rolled far away. He stepped into the alley, and a shape detached from the wall. Rain hit the alley like fast drums and shoved Riley into motion. A shape peeled from the wall and matched his pace. He felt heat in his chest and ice in his hands. Riley said, "Back off." The shape laughed once and fell in behind him. Sirens bled through the blocks, thin and far. Neon pulsed on wet brick and turned the dark into a warning. Riley cut left toward the market lights. He could smell fry oil, wet paper, and the sharp bite of fear. A vendor stared and then looked away. Riley said, "I am not your mark." Footsteps answered. He knew the deal was dead, and now someone wanted the body of it. He pushed through a bus shelter and saw a face in the glass. Cole Vance, The man who smiled when doors closed. Riley said, "Why you?" Cole tilted his head, calm as a snake. The bus hissed in, blocking sight, and a hand closed on Riley's shoulder. Riley slipped into a diner and let the door thud shut. Heat and coffee steam wrapped him. The jukebox hummed low. He found a booth and watched the window bead with rain. Eva Brooks slid in across from him and placed a napkin on the table. Eva said, "You look hunted." He laughed without joy. He told her the deal was gone, and a name had appeared in the glass. She listened with her hands still, eyes sharp and kind. Riley said, "I do not know who to trust." Eva said, "Then start with what you can see." The waitress poured coffee and left a quiet space. Exhaustion tugged at his eyes, but the fear kept them open. Eva pushed a key across the table. Eva said, "Safe place one night." He stared at the key and heard the rain slow, like breath easing. A city map on the wall pointed east, and so did his doubt. They left by the back door and crossed to the lot. A black SUV idled with lights off. The engine note was smooth and sure. Riley felt how money sounds when it breathes. A window eased down an inch. A voice said, "Come talk. Save yourself the chase." He knew that tone, power that did not raise its voice. Cole Vance did not step out. He did not need to. Riley said, "You want me to fold?" The lock on the SUV clicked like a clock hand. Another door opened across the street, as if the block obeyed him. Eva said, "Keep walking." The sky tore with a quick flash. Riley counted the seconds for thunder and heard none. He thought of how deals die and dreams follow. Note. He stared at the SUV and felt a leash he could not see. The SUV eased forward, patient. The voice said, "Last chance, Riley." They cut through side streets until the city thinned. A service door opened to a quiet warehouse. Marcus Hale waited with a careful smile and a limp that told old stories. Marcus said, "You picked a loud night to wake up." The place smelled of oil and wood dust. A workshop lamp hung low and poured a circle of soft gold. Riley spoke of the text, the chase, the SUV that moved like a verdict. Marcus listened and watched his hands. Marcus said, "Some doors close to show you the wall you must climb." Eva looked at the floor, guilty heat in her cheeks. Riley said, "Tell me the part I missed." Marcus pointed at a folder on the bench. Inside were copies of numbers Riley thought were safe. Marcus said, "You hidden light, Cole lives there." The words settled like iron. Marcus said, "If you run, he wins slow." Riley closed the folder and felt the heat of choice. Fear pressed in, but resolve pushed back. He said, "I am done running." Marcus nodded once, like ticking a box that had waited years. Eva said, "If you go at Cole, you need proof and a path." Riley saw the safe key and a diner light in memory. He saw the map pointing east. He pictured a storage unit, a ledger, a drive no one checked. He moved while he spoke. He stuffed the folder into the duffel and pulled the zipper hard. The rain outside rose again, steady and sure, like a drum you march to. Riley said, "We split and meet at dawn." Marcus said, "Dawn is late. Make it first light." Eva touched his arm and held his eyes. Eva said, "Do not make me regret that key." Riley turned for the door and did not look back. First light softened the street and made the rain a thin veil. Riley reached the storage unit and felt a rare calm, the hush before noise. A figure waited by the keypad with a sheepish smile. Noah Reed raised both hands. "Noah," said Eva sent me. "I know the lock code trick." He looked like help, rough around the edges, eyes quick but warm. Riley said, "If this is another trap, walk away now." Noah laughed small. Noah said, "I fix messes. Tonight is a landfill." The gate rolled up with a metal groan. Dust and cold air spilled out. Riley felt safety press close, and then drift. He watched Noah's hands and saw a slight tremor when he reached for the light cord. Riley said. We go slow. Noah nodded. Too fast. They worked in a quiet rhythm that felt almost safe. Riley sorted boxes and found a small fireproof case. Noah whistled under his breath and killed it when Riley looked. Noah, said old habits. Riley smiled without meaning it. He thought of the diner key and the map line to this place. He felt the lift of being two against the dark. Noah said, you ever think the first loss is the real gift? Riley said, not tonight. Noah shrugged. The lock on the case clicked and a drive lay inside like a bright tooth. Relief tried to bloom. Riley stopped it. He studied Noah's face and saw a shadow cross his eyes when the drive caught light. Riley said, bag it, then move. Noah agreed, and his breath stuttered once. Noah talked while they packed, and his words shaped a mirror. Noah said, you built everything on faith and speed. Cole built on patience. Riley heard the jab and felt the truth in it. Riley said, speed kept me alive. Noah said, it also made you loud. The unit felt smaller, the air thinner. Riley thought of how he rushed the deal and missed the quiet hand that moved the board. Noah said, if you were Cole, you would not chase. You would wait at the finish. Riley said, I am not Cole. Noah smiled, and the smile never touched his eyes. A car door shut outside, soft and planned. Riley felt doubt crawl, slow and cold, and sit with him. The unit light clicked off. Darkness swallowed edges. Riley grabbed the drive and stepped back. A second light came on in the corridor, cold and flat. Cole Vance stood at the mouth of the row with two men and an easy stance. Cole said, you always bring the party to me. Noah did not move to Riley's side. He stepped away. Riley felt a slice across his chest that had no blood. Riley said, you? Noah said, I told you I fix messes. The words stung. Cole's eyes were kind and empty. Cole said, hand me the future you cannot carry. The aisle hummed like a live wire. Riley set his feet and made no speech. He breathed, and the choice hurt. Silence spread and then broke with a single step. Riley faded back into the unit and pulled the roll-up door hard. Metal rattled and screamed. He felt the slam in his bones. A lock pin slid and held for now. His breath roared in his ears, and shame roared with it. Riley said, you chose your side. Noah's voice came thin through the door. Noah said, you chose noise. Riley stared at the small vent near the ceiling and the thin light crawling in. The truth landed fast. Cole did not need to chase. He could wait and close every path. Riley packed the drive deep into the duffel and climbed toward the vent. He said, I will not break for you. The unit smelled of dust and rain, and a new direction formed like a blade. Silence held as Riley slid from the vent into the cold dawn. The lot was empty but for dripping eaves and a lone bird cry. Air felt thin, clean, and sharp. His pulse slowed, and thought returned in measured steps. He sifted the last hour and saw how Noah smiled without eyes. He saw how Cole never hurried because the board was his. Riley said, I missed the quiet moves. He pictured the diner key, the folder, the SUV that waited like a judge. Light spread across wet concrete, soft and flat. He breathed and followed the light. He mapped links in his head and felt a pattern wake. Numbers sat inside public files, bright as bait. Riley said, he hides in daylight. A truck backfired far off. He lifted his phone, opened an old email, and found a name he once trusted. The smell of old coffee pulled a door in his mind. He stood in memory under warm lights and a new promise. Cole shook his hand months ago in a glass office that hummed like a hive. Cole said, speed is a story. Trust is the product. Riley had believed because the room felt like sunrise. Paper rustled, pens scratched, and a citrus cleaner cut the air. In the present, rain tapped a slow beat on a mailbox. Past and now fused. Eva said back then, check the footnotes, and he had laughed it off. Printer chirped in the memory and hit a line of names. Riley saw it now, simple and cruel. The shell company that signed the deal was Cole's Mirror. Riley said, you wrote both sides. The truth hit like ice water and burned all the same. Riley walked to the river path where the city wakes slow. He called Marcus and met him under a rusted bridge. Wind pressed water into small silver teeth. Riley handed the drive and spoke in tight lines. Marcus listened and let the noise pass before words. Marcus said, say it plain. Riley said, Cole funded the buyer. He killed the deal to own the wreckage. Their breaths showed. Trains clattered far above like answers he could not hear. They stood in the pause and let it bite. Marcus said, what do you want to be when this is done? Riley weighed the hurt and a lesson. He heard his heartbeat count yes or no. He said, I want the truth on record. Marcus nodded once, a verdict without heat. Cole called before noon. His voice was warm like a lobby heater. Cole said, you built a myth and now you need a villain. I prefer math. Riley let silence carry weight. Cole went on, markets do not care who cries. They care who plans. The words were calm, polished, and clean. Riley looked at cranes across the river and felt the city tilt toward power. Cole said, you moved fast, loud, and blind. I moved slow, quiet, and legal. Riley said, you wrote the rules and buried the names. Cole said, I found the openings you left. The line hummed. Good and evil blurred in the static. A small truth hurt most. He had fed the plan with his pride. He stared at his reflection in the phone screen and saw both of them there. Riley sat on a bench and let the wind comb his thoughts. The loss stood beside him like an old friend who would not leave. He named it and felt lighter. He said, so this was the truth all along. Simple words. Heavy ground. He closed his eyes and saw paths he had missed because he loved the shine. He opened them and saw the plain road ahead. It was not grand. It was honest. He called Eva and said, I need a list of every file Cole signed by proxy. She said, you are ready now. The river light cleared from gray to steel. He stood. He was not fixed, but he was awake. He chose to act with care, not noise. The day waited, patient. Evening fell with a dry hush, and the office tower breathed cold air. Riley and Eva rode the elevator without words. The light flickered once, like a blink before a punch. He felt sweat along his spine and counted breaths to 4. Eva said, we do this clean. Doors slid open to a floor of glass and steel. Their shoes clicked, then stilled. The hum of vents and distant traffic set the drum. Riley said, he will not expect quiet. A motion sensor woke a strip of light. Files waited on a conference table, like a line of graves. He heard his heart, steady now. He set the drive and cable in place. He said, when he steps in, we start. Footsteps approached from the far hall and broke the air. Cole entered with the calm of a man who owned the hour. 2 men flanked him and closed the door. Cole said, you brought a story to read me. Riley said, I brought receipts. Eva slid a printed list across the table and kept her hand on the edge. The room felt small. The city pressed its face to the glass. Cole smiled thin. Cole said, you do not understand the game. Riley said, I understand who pays for it. Words fell like cards. Breath quickened. Cole stepped closer, and shadows crossed his eyes. Riley tapped the drive, and the wall screen woke in data. Cole's name linked to names that wore masks. The 2 men moved. Eva said, pick your next step with care. The first shove sent the table skidding. Papers flew like pale birds. One of Cole's men grabbed for the drive. Marcus stepped from the side door he had wedged hours ago. Marcus said, not tonight. He moved with a limp that did not slow his hands. He caught the man's wrist and turned it hard. The room flashed with motion, then froze on a breath. Cole said, "You should have stayed retired." Marcus smiled, small and proud. He took the hit that came and dropped to a knee. Riley felt the world narrow. Eva said, "Move the file." Riley dragged the cable free and shielded Marcus. The quiet between strikes was louder than the noise. The price was paid and still rising. Riley faced Cole by the window where the city burned in dots. Rain began again, fine and needled. Cole said, "You want a clean world. It does not exist." Riley said, "It can be cleaner than this." They circled the table wreck. Their shoes slid on paper. The screen showed a single chain of names, bright as a fuse. Riley moved first, fast and direct, not loud. He pressed the drive to the backup port and sent the files to a public drop. Cole lunged and caught his arm. Riley felt fire in muscle and old fear wake. He did not feed it. He set his feet. He said, "It ends now." The send bar filled like sunrise. The file left the room, and the room exhaled. Sirens rose below, like a tide turning. Cole let go and stepped back into his own shadow. Eva helped Marcus to a chair. Riley stood still and let the shake pass through him. He felt small and clear at once. He said, "It is out." The screen went dark and showed only their faces in faint glass. The building hummed like a long-held breath released. Cole said, "This is only delay." Riley said, "It is enough for tonight." Silence spread with weight and grace. The rain softened. A single drop slid down the glass and drew a line through the city lights. The building slept after the storm of voices. Air vents sighed. Distant sirens faded to a thin line. Riley stood by the window and watched rain clear from the glass. Streetlights blurred, then sharpened. His chest rose slow, like a tide that finally turns. The table was set back in place, but the room still remembered the fight. Paper edges curled where water had kissed them. He heard Eva's quiet steps and Marcus's careful breath. He said, "It is over for tonight." The words felt small and honest. He walked the length of the room and touched the dark screen. The silence gave him back his name. He knew what he had kept and what he had lost. Riley sat alone in a side office and let the hum settle around him. His hands shook once and then were steady. The drive lay on the desk like a small moon. He thought of the alley, the SUV, the door he slammed on his own fear. He saw Noah's eyes when the light went out, calm as someone who had chosen a path long ago. Guilt pressed, then loosened. Relief followed, soft and strange. He whispered, "I did not quit." A memory flickered of coffee steam and a brass key on a diner table. He breathed and counted to 4. The count used to be for courage. Now it was for truth. Life would go on. It would not be the same. Eva found him by the corridor where the carpet held the night scuffs. She moved slow, one hand on the wall. Their eyes met and time thinned. Eva said, "You did what you said." He nodded, and the echo of fight fell away. He remembered the key and how her voice steadied his breath. He said, "You stayed when it mattered." Her smile was small and bright with fatigue. For a long moment, words were not needed. The room carried their history in quiet lines. He said, "I forgive the doubt." She closed her eyes once, like a door that opened again, clean. The ache in his chest eased. Marcus sat with a wrapped rib and a steady gaze. The workshop lamp he loved was not here, but his voice carried that warmth. Marcus said, "Doors teach, some close to save you." The line sounded like a note from years ago. Riley heard the shape of every lesson inside it. He remembered the folder on the bench and how truth wore plain clothes. He said, "You walked in when it counted." Marcus said, "You walked through when it hurt." Their silence felt like a handshake. Time laid out 2 tracks, The fast way that breaks, the patient way that holds. A thin smile found Riley and stayed. When the sun cleared the ridge of glass, Riley made his choice. He uploaded the summary, signed his name, and sent it to the people who would keep it honest. He boxed the rest, labeled every piece, and set a copy aside for the record. He walked the empty hall once more, and let the floor return his steps without haste. Eva waited by the elevator. Marcus watched from the doorway. Riley said, "We go forward, one true step at a time." The doors opened with a soft bell. He held the drive like a quiet promise. The day did not shout. It bowed and made room. Morning settled like a blanket, just pulled straight. Traffic moved in soft lines. Birds tested the air above a clean street. Riley stood on a quiet bridge and watched the river take last night away. He counted his breaths and found no rush hiding in them. He said, "What remains is enough." Loss stood near, not hostile, only true. He pictured the faces across the table and the paper that flew like startled doves. He named the cost and did not look away. He felt the weight lift a finger. Was it worth it? The question sat beside the answer and did not demand a fight. He walked the long river path with the drive sealed and sent. Shoes whispered on damp stone. A trash can held a stack of old flyers, and he slid the last copy of The Dead Deal on top. He watched it rest without drama. Eva called and said, "Breakfast, then rest." He said, "Yes." The word landed like a key in the right lock. Wind moved across the water and carried a faint bell from the harbor. He placed his phone in his pocket and let his arms swing easy. The city had a slower rhythm now. He matched it and did not fall behind. Later, in the diner, the jukebox murmured a tune older than the scars. The brass key lay on the table between two mugs. Eva said, "Keep it, for when doors shake again." Her voice felt like a note from a letter he had not opened until now. Marcus's message chimed on his phone. A single line. Marcus said, "Slow is not surrender." Riley read it twice and let the meaning settle. He traced the key's teeth and felt the story turn inside him. He said, "This is what we learned. The world outside shone without trying. The truth was not loud. It was clear." News vans rolled past the tower and then left, bored by the lack of spectacle. Office workers returned in quiet pairs. The city resumed its breath. Riley watched a crew remove a broken panel and set a new one with patient hands. He thought of how repair hides in plain sight. He said, "Thank you," to no one and to everyone who had stood still when the floor moved. Time widened. Afternoon, light found new edges in the glass. The day grew older and softer. Change did not shout, it worked. At dusk, the river held a single line of light. Riley stood where he had started the morning. He opened his hand and let the air pass through his fingers. He said truth must never be owned. The words were small and final. He listened for an echo and heard only water finding its way. He turned toward the path and began to walk. The night did not hurry. Neither did he. The journey did not end. It became a quieter road with room to breathe.